we went to undergrad together at Rhodes College. Um, I think we met either because of the Black Student Association or student government. I can't really remember. I feel like it was just
A
so
little
long.
bit of both, maybe a little bit of both.
Probably.
I remember seeing you in SGA before anything else. Because I was like, hey, there's another Black person.
I
Hey,
have
he's
very
really cool.
little memories of SGA except going to that room every day. Not every day, but like every week, and just being super busy on top of
Mm,
that. SGA, yeah. Uh, you graduated in 2016 or 17?
17.
Okay, so you were a freshman my senior year. Okay, so
Mhm.
yeah, because I couldn't come to a lot of SGA because of basketball and just a lot happening. Lord Jesus. Yeah. Oh, so then you got to listen to my terrible speech at was it convocation? Whatever the beginning year thing is, where we get to intimidate the freshmen with those robes.
Yes, yeah. Your speech wasn't terrible.
I feel like I speak quickly, and I feel like at that moment I was like super nervous, and then but they said it was good. Like it's over now. There's nothing I can do about it. So
Yeah, it's been 7, 8 years. I don't even know how long.
we don't need to talk about that. So Alexis is a third and fourth grade science teacher in the LA area, and I believe you are teaching virtually. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
So how have you been since the last time we spoke, which is a while ago, and how have you just been in general with the pandemic and teaching?
Yeah, I mean, that's a long span of time. Even just the pandemic and teaching, it's been, you know, essentially 9 months at this point, I think. In March, we went virtual, and I remember the day like so clearly because I was running around our school to try to have like packets. Science is really hard to teach already, especially to people who might know multiple languages, and I don't have any kind of like multilingual skills. So even just being able to like teach in the classroom, something that is like not familiar to everyone involved is a really fun thing, but can also be really difficult. So I remember running around trying to get like packets together for all the grades because I was teaching kindergarten through third grade at the time. Um, and we're a founding school, so every year we just add another grade. Um, so I was trying to get packets for everyone that day, and I got a few, and then my dean was just like, yeah, we can't print it on time. Like our printers are packed and jammed with reading and math packets and like what to do packets and just like so many packets. So I had like done all that and then I couldn't even send them home with the kids. And then ever since then, it's pretty much felt like that. Like, I want to do something for them that I think will make their experience a lot better. And then I'll get feedback that that's actually not as possible as I thought it was. Um, and like resources, you know, being able to have resources is a really big issue, I think, for most teachers. I know for me, it's really hard to do like science experiments and things like that virtually. You know, I can't teach you how to create a circuit board and how electricity runs through it online all the time. So I think that's been the most disappointing thing. I think the experience has been really disappointing, and I'm sure kids feel that as well because it's like they're the best part. I want to see them. I want to hang out with them. And it's just hard to know like what they need right now. Um, so it's been really disappointing. Yeah. It's hard to start on a sad note, but it's true.
And you mentioned a lot of things I do want to get to at some point. But I also want to talk about you, like how did you get into teaching, and how long have
Mm.
you been teaching?
So I got into teaching on accident. I feel like a lot of teachers might have fell into it kind of thing. I was in Denver. I've been teaching for 3 years now. I was in Denver at the time, and I was a barista. I was a social media, manager. I was working in a boutique. Like I had 2 to 4 jobs depending on the time. Um, And I was trying to blog. I was trying to do a lot and not really having like a place that felt good yet. Like I was just exploring, I think is really what it was. Um, and a friend actually was like, hey, you should try out TFA. I have a lot of not great thoughts about TFA. But I tried it and it got me into teaching. And for that, I will be grateful. Um, I was with TFA for a year before I decided kind of finally that it wasn't for me, but it did help me kind of like get into teaching. And I got into a really great education program in Denver called Relay. They have it in Memphis as well. Shout out to Relay. Best teaching I've ever had. And that's what really actually hooked me on teaching was going through their master's program. And I remember the first day was like an 8-hour day and it felt like 2 hours. And I was like, if you can make 8 hours of information feel like 2 hours, you're a great teacher and I want to learn from you. And that's like pretty much how I learned to teach was um, my professors were great and they taught me a lot. And TFA does not equip you super well with like getting into the classroom, actually knowing what you're doing. And at that time, I still taught science, but it was K-5 in Denver with no curriculum at all. So I had to like create everything for 10 classes a day. It was not good. It was really hard. I was really panicked like most days. Um, but relay is like kind of what was my anchor in a lot of ways. And um, it just made me realize that my motivation originally for like being a Black woman in the classroom was actually maybe more important than I gave it credit. Like I was like, yeah, kids need representation. Um, but I think like I needed representation, you know, like I needed to see myself in the classroom because I taught a lot of Black and brown students, but you know, much more brown students than Black students. And so some kids didn't even know that I was Black. And I mean, that's a little bit of light skin privilege as well. But just being able to see that for myself was really important of like, no, there need to be like Black women scientists in people's minds and kids' minds. They need to see myself, whether or not I look like them, you know? So I think that was a part of the motivation to stay in the classroom. And then I just started having so much fun. Like, that's what kept me there. I was like, all right, well, this is a mess. It's a hot mess. We're gonna roll with it. And so we just rolled with it for the first year in Denver. And then I moved out to LA because my partner lives here and we didn't want to do the long distance anymore. So moved out here, found a really great social justice based school and have been trying to unionize and have been trying to like do the things that are important to me while teaching. So all while teaching science while trying to make sure that my science classroom is centered around equity and social justice and representation and um, attacking the biases that kind of inherently come with a lot of the white supremacy culture embedded in science. So we do a lot of those things. And yeah, I'll pause there because that was a lot.
Okay, you just gave me a lot of stuff that I want to touch on, so it's great. I definitely have heard a lot of what you're saying about TFA. I've heard that from people, and I have a lot of friends who, specifically from Rhodes, who like teaching just like came up and they took the route and they've become great teachers, winning awards and everything. So kind of like leads to the fact like some people don't know they want to be teachers and it just falls into them. They become a really great teachers. So love it that you were able to find
Yeah.
that. Um, let's talk about August. School starts. You're virtual.
Mm-hmm.
How do you start your day? Like, what happens? Like, how do you start building those relationships with families and students now that you're not in person?
Mm. I think because that's probably one of my biggest strengths is relationship building. I had a lot of relationships already built since I taught at my same school last year as well. Um, and without that, I don't know how I would be doing right now, you know, because I already know my students in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously they're evolving, so I get to like keep learning them. But I taught every single student in our school last year. So the third and fourth graders that I teach this year instead of the kindergarten through third graders, now I only teach 2 grades, and I've already taught all of them, maybe with the exception of like 8 or 9 new students this year in each grade. So I know most of them. I know a lot about how they work, and I would see them just about every day last year as well as their science teacher because there was only one of me and all of them. So that really, really helped being able to just have those connections. I already know so many parents, like, because there are a lot of siblings in my school. So I'll just be like, hey, how's this person doing? Like, it's super easy to check in because I already have those relationships built. And I didn't even realize like how important that would be this year because I think without the relationships, it would be terrible, honestly. As are most things, I think relationships are super important. So, that being said, relationship building has become the center of any curriculum that I do. Anything that we do has to be also focused on kids getting to socialize with other kids, like other people their age, not just me. Like, I love them, they love me, but like I'm not their age. So being able to give them that space is something I've learned since August because a lot of them were getting Zoom fatigue. A lot of them were like, okay, like this is really interesting science stuff, but I've literally been online since like 8 a.m. this morning and I just don't have the energy to do your lesson. Um, and I think like it's important to listen to that. And so since August, everything that I thought I was going to be doing this year has like gone out the window. And I just like started from scratch probably this past November. I was teaching like to the scope and sequence. I was trying to make it, more interesting and more fun and liven it up and, you know, get my, total body movement in where we stand up and we create a vocab word with our bodies. Like, and it just wasn't hitting. People were just like, I just don't want to play another video. So I get that. I understand that. So I think because I've changed my scope and sequence, we're not doing like the science scope and sequence at all anymore. Um, I think my biggest worry is like, where will we be next year when a lot of the things that, our very linear capitalistic education system like has previously required is no longer like applicable. For example, like they wouldn't have gone through a whole year of third grade science, been tested in all these ways, like had to do assessments in this way, had these grades, like none of that is there anymore. So like the biggest question is what do we do and how do we restructure our education system to be more personally focused and relationally focused instead of just like, here are your objectives, here are your assessments, this is how you did, this is your data, fix it. Like people don't need that. I don't think. So I would be really curious and I'm really pushing for a lot of change in the way that we teach.
Gotcha. So one note I'm going to say, my camera will like flick off for a minute, but I'll still be here to flick back on, just a note before it happens. And how many students do you have per class?
Per individual class or grade level?
Individual class or just total, whichever one you want to give.
I think total, I have about 250 students that I interact with right now. Uh, but per class, it varies. Some classes have 30 students, some classes have a little bit less, like 26 or something. Some have a little bit more, like 32. I don't think I teach a class bigger than 35.
All on a screen.
All on a screen? Yeah.
I'm gonna get to that really. I just want to clarify one thing. What is the science scoping system or a scope?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I assumed a lot there. Science scope and sequence is basically something that you set up into units. Um, I don't know even much of my own elementary science education experience, but we basically have like four main topics and we split that up into quarters. And so my school's on the quarter system, and every quarter we do one main topic for that grade. And there are a lot of like intricacies about it that, kind of transfer. There are a lot of skills that can transfer over time and knowledge that builds upon itself over time.
Mhm.
So at the beginning of the quarter, they might be able to um, identify patterns. And by the end of the quarter, hopefully they would be able to like make connections of those patterns. And those are transferable skills that happen within the knowledge that we're doing. So maybe they see a light pattern of electricity, and then we talk about that. And then hopefully we'll identify it. They can write about it, all those things. So there's a lot that goes into it, not just the knowledge of it, but also the skills of it and the vocabulary of it. And you're supposed to stick to this curriculum scope and sequence through Amplify, which is probably actually my favorite science curriculum I've ever had, because it really allows for a lot of the deconstruction of white supremacist culture in it. It gives a lot of flexibility for that. Um, but it's very strict. Like each lesson is 40 minutes long, and you're supposed to do a 40-minute long lesson every single day for them to be like on par with the timing of the scope and sequence to get through all 4 units by the end of the year. Um, and basically, like if you have an off day, which all people do, then you're like behind. So
Mhm.
that's probably the hardest part of it.
Gotcha. Okay. You said you teach no more than 35 students in the class on one screen. How is teaching science on a screen with third and fourth graders?
I prefer it to pre-recorded videos.
Okay.
I think my school started off science with pre-recorded videos, and the live sessions, as we call them, like pre-recorded live, I have to do both once a week. So I have to do one pre-recorded and one live session a week. I don't see them every day. And we have it where on Thursdays, all of third grade comes to one session and all of fourth grade comes to another session. Um, and we've actually made it optional so they can either come in person or watch the recap. And at first, it was really hard because it was hard to manage. Um, but I gave my students a survey to let me know what's up. And I was like, is this working for you? Are you interested? What do you actually want to be learning about, instead of like what the scope and sequence tells us to learn about? I got a lot of feedback from them saying, like, this is where the social time comes in. Like, they thought science is really fun and interesting, but they miss their friends and they don't have time for recess. They don't have like fun time to socialize during lunch. They don't get a lot of time during their like math and reading classes to be able to talk to each other really even. It's just like people talking to them. Um, and I think that's a product of like other people panicking and wanting kids to not lose a year of education kind of thing, um, which I have thoughts on. But I think for the sake of this conversation, the live sessions have actually become a lot more manageable because I quit the scope and sequence and just listened to their feedback. And we just play games now. And that's what we do. I will create Kahoots and I'll create um, other kinds of like quizzes, and we'll just like play it like Family Feud style. Like we split the group up in half. You're on this team, you're on this team. You can chat it in real quick, or you can unmute yourself if you think you can get it first, or raise your hand and I'll unmute you. And you got 30 seconds to like answer what is the definition of, electricity, since we're going with that. And so I'll embed some of the science content into our games. Like every game is science based, but they want to learn about space and volcanoes and animals. And so that's what I teach now. I just kind of teach what they want to learn about, because they're not even getting a grade on science. And I'm like, well, if this isn't going to, impact your grades long term, why make this miserable for you? You know? Um, so we just put it aside for now and we just use it as social time more than anything else. It's like science-based social time. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from them that they love it. I've gotten a lot more attendance, and a lot more feedback from parents that like it's actually fun for their students. And parents join, and like other kids that I've taught in the past, like people's siblings that are younger. I'm just like, hey, you're in the back. Like, come on, you want something to do? Come learn with us. Come play this game. Um, and I think that that's seems like what they need right now is that building of community. So it's a lot better for me because I'm not stressing out every single day about like timing and all that other stuff. Um, yeah.
Okay, so a lot of questions. Um, it's great that you found a way basically to keep them engaged, which is going to be my question, like how you keep them engaged. You've had to switch things up because, I mean, if science isn't, obviously I'm not working in the school system, so it's kind of interesting that they're not getting a grade on science, because I feel like science is that one subject where you're either up moving around the classroom sometimes because you might be doing a lab, or it's a little like elementary science and younger lower grades is more. I mean, even high school science, like you're doing chemistry, you're doing biology, you're doing like it's very hands on. So it's probably
Mhm.
difficult to teach that on a computer. And from what I think I'm understanding is that you'll probably teach them next year anyway. So whatever, it's not like you're not teaching them things that anything else have to do with it. Like you are teaching what they'll learn, and you'll be bringing them back up next year. So it's kind of like, let's make it easy for you now. Next year we'll figure it out, and you'll have more time to understand like what worked, what didn't. Maybe next year you'll be able to take those quizzes and make them more aligned with whatever they're supposed to be learning, I guess. But it'll help. Like they that stuff is the stuff they'll remember. Like the stuff when you have fun, and at least for me, like I remember that more than just like reading out of a book or whatever. Kind of wanted. I was a little lost on your week. So you don't see them every day. So what's your week look like for teaching?
Okay, so my week, I do a little bit more than just teach, but let's go with the teaching. So on Tuesdays, I post a pre-recorded video that is likely recorded, scripted, and written on Mondays. Um, and then I post the video on Tuesdays, and I do um, kind of like another prep on Wednesday where I prep my live session, for both third and fourth grade. Oh, and all of these things are for both third and fourth grade. So I'll prep and write a video for third grade, prep and write a video for fourth grade, record and post both on Tuesdays. And then I'll prep both of their live lessons on Wednesdays, have that on Thursdays. And a lot of that is looking over their work on Wednesdays, and even Thursday morning, giving them feedback, giving them some like, pushes like next time try this is great, and making sure that they have comments and things like that on their science work so they kind of can gauge like, what is something I need to focus on, um, which is kind of hard since they don't have those packets. Um, so yeah, just basically like being able to give them a lot of feedback, um, and then reminding them about on Thursday morning about our live session later that day at either 1 o'clock or 1:45. Each are a 45-minute session back to back, for third and fourth grade. And then on Fridays, I will post an edited version of our live session as their like second pre-recorded one, which is an edit that I asked for my manager because I was doing 2 pre-recorded videos and a live session, and so that's like 3 videos per week. And that was just not manageable for both grades to do that because then that would end up being like 6 videos per week, and one was just a recorded version of my live session, but it was too much. Um, so they basically just get 2 lessons a week from me instead of 3 lessons a week from me. Um, And then outside of teaching, my department is art, science, PE, and dance and Spanish. So all five of us are one department, and we similarly all teach like the entire school. Now, with the exception of me, I just teach third and fourth grade. But we lead something called community meeting, and that's like with our entire school, so about 500 students every Monday. We will have a skit prepared for them. We'll record it. We will um, plan for that on Wednesdays as well. And we'll like coordinate dances, we'll coordinate anything that we think will be helpful, like how to stay safe, what is COVID, like kind of addressing some of the elephants in the room, like why are we at home, just in case they haven't been getting that information. And then we started an anti-racism task force as well this year. So a lot of the things I'm doing when I'm not teaching are also for the anti-racism task force, whether that be like having conversations with parents about what is race, why is it important, why do we focus on white supremacy and combating that as opposed to like other supremacies that people have been confused about, and asking for a union because a lot of charter schools don't have unions. So really petitioning to be able to have more collective power and collective accountability for unequitable structures, and things like that. So those are some other things outside of just teaching that actually give me more energy to teach right now, that have been really helpful.
Nice. So you're doing a lot. And it's interesting because obviously I've spoken to multiple teachers and I feel like a lot of us are on different plans. So that's a different plan that I haven't heard, that like you're going to science twice a week and a third day recap possibly. So that's super interesting. So I mean, I imagine you can't even do the Amplify curriculum with that type of schedule. There's kind of no way.
Yeah, yeah. I think I could never even make it probably to the end of the second unit on the schedule. And I think I realized that back in October after really trying to get more live sessions. I wanted to teach science every day, live every day with the kids, um, and do Amplify that way. My principal just said, like, kids didn't have time, kids didn't need to be, she's great in that way. She was like, kids just don't have the space right now to be on Zoom that long. And so I think because of that, because of not being able to teach Amplify, it's maybe given me a little bit more space to pursue other kind of passions and work that I would have embedded in my science classroom. That now I get to spend more time not only putting into the lessons I do teach, but also in other places of our school and our network. So,
Gotcha. And you said sometimes parents play the games. How has parent involvement been this semester? So I feel like that's huge. Like how have they been just as parents?
um, they are hilarious to me. I love getting to talk to parents. I think they're great, or guardians or caregivers, whoever is that like students person. And I hear a lot of frustration from them. I think when I get to do like check-ins, because we have like a certain group of students that we check in with also every week. And during their check-ins, I encourage all caregivers to be present as well so that like they can talk about like what's going on. And I hear a lot of frustration from them around like kids being home and not getting enough movement, um, not being able to really focus, all that kind of stuff that comes with like, the trauma of COVID. Um, and I think like a lot of parents seem to have given up. It seems like they're tired, and I think it's understandable. Like, a lot of them have changed jobs to accommodate for that at home, and, you know, that kind of commitment. They've really like committed to staying at home with their kids, and or with the students that they're taking care of. And I find that a lot of them are really tired. So when we get to play a game in science, they're like, "Oh yes, like we're having some fun. We're getting to talk to each other. Like we're just gonna sit down and check in. How are you doing? Like those kinds of things." And during my more like one-on-one check-ins with my set of parents, that's where I hear a lot of the feedback of like, we really like that you changed science because we didn't even know some of the stuff that you were teaching and couldn't help our students really like have this. And I feel like a lot of caregivers were just, also as overwhelmed, it seems, as students were. Um, so obviously, like this doesn't fix it all, being able to check in and play games, like it's just a reprieve from the larger situation. But um, I think it makes a little difference, and that's important. So they seem to be, also equally overwhelmed.
Which I'm not surprised with. I've obviously have coworkers who have kids, and like being on Zoom meetings with them, they're like, "Okay, my kid's home, so I might have to run away for a second." Like, that's fine. I don't have kids, so I can't even imagine. Have you had a situation where you've had a family affected negatively by COVID, whether that be financially or they've lost a family member, and how is your school handling that?
So yes, I think we have had families that unfortunately have lost jobs, a lot of families that have lost jobs to COVID. Um, we know of a less families that have lost a loved one to COVID. Um, but I think to me, that's more of like I'm sure that people don't want to just announce it.
Mhm.
I'm sure that's more of like their personal privacy situation. They will let us know when they'll be absent from, classes, because that's really what they get their report cards on, is how many times they show up. Um, but I think that a lot of families have found it hard to maintain and engage our schools like strict schedule with people dying in their lives and with like losing their jobs and things like that. Our school does provide internet and Chromebooks for every student, um, which is really great. I think that that's probably one of the things I've appreciated most about my school during this time. So that helps. But that being said, like a lot of families that I know that have had to switch jobs or lost a job um, during COVID have had to like, if they have the option, they'll send their kid to, you know, a grandparent or something like that. And that can also be really hard and scary for them. Um, and I found a lot of parents are like having a lot more pressure. I'm getting a little bit emotional. But I think it's really hard. I think this whole situation is really hard, and I hate it for families. Like, I hate it for, you know, it kind of being all on the caregivers, like they can just put us on mute if they want to, like, but the community feel of it is what I wish could be a little bit, better. But a lot of our families don't have like huge extending safety nets, it seems. And I mean, we're a Title I school, so I think that's a part of it, is that a lot of our families are experiencing, poverty or working class, and have lost jobs because in California, like, there's so much poverty and so much um, housing instability, and kids have, and families and caregivers have all lost their homes. Well, not all, but I know of a few that have lost their homes and are like, I can't access the internet that you gave me for free because I don't have a place right now. And so I think just like feeling powerless in that has been hard on my end, and just trying to check in where I can, but understanding that they probably have like three other people doing that and don't want to respond. Like, I wish I knew how to help more. But I also wish that like we had more systemic safety net for our family so that they wouldn't have to kind of go through this on their own.
Yeah. And well, I feel like that gets into politics, and we all know how that's going right now. And so
Mhm.
a big eye roll at what's happening currently, because like that should be where the help is coming from.
Mhm.
But it's not. Um, and so, kind of wants it not to be on the negative side. What has been a bright moment for you this semester? Like your favorite moment that's happened this semester?
My favorite my favorite moment that's happened this semester has probably been like one of two moments. Um, One is actually witnessing and being unfortunately slightly a part of a fight between a mom and her son. And it was my favorite because um, this mom that I have a great relationship with was telling her son that like he needs to be, attentive in science. This is Miss Moore. She's been great to you. She taught you science last year. How could you not go to her lessons or something like that? And he was just like, yeah, but Miss Moore is great. She'll understand like all this stuff. But this was during a check-in. So like they are actively bickering in front of me. And I'm like, hey guys, like it's okay. Like all of it's okay. Just like do what you need, and if he can't make it, go to the recording. And my that was one of my favorite moments because they were both like assured in my relationship with them, and they were like having a different perspective of how to react to that in a way of the student just being like, I'm tired, he has ADHD, like he has a really hard time like staying on Zoom. Like I know these things, and so I'm like, can you get him a standing desk? Maybe that'll help. Like, or just like prop his little Chromebook up on a dresser. Like that could be great, and he can move around. And that was just one of my favorite moments because it just felt like such like a familial thing to happen, and it
Mhm.
was really lovely. And another one is probably my fourth grade students. I have this like group of girls that like rides hard for science seminar for some reason. And they're just like, okay, we're all going to show up. We're going to be there 5 minutes early. And they all show up, they're 5 minutes early, and they just want to chat. And I love that. So I started opening the room for them whenever they come. It's gotten to the point where now they're like, can I start teaching science? So we'll like plan out ways for them to like teach science next week. And they've together they have taught science maybe about 3 or 4 times already this year, and they do a great job. Like it takes a little bit of prep work, but they're with it, they're ready to do the prep work. They're just like super excited, and I can count on them, and it's just lovely that I'm just like, all right, I know that you like 6 people are going to show up every single time early, and you're ready to like dig in and even teach science. And I would love to just like post a video of you all on our Google Classroom teaching, and they get a lot of like positive comments. I'm like, subscribe. We put some like YouTube stuff in there. Like, I don't know, but let's just make it fun or something. So we just like joke around a lot, and that's probably another one of my favorite moments that I can look forward to every week.
So in like 14 to 15 years, we should check back and see if any of them have become teachers. I feel like you're like developing the future teachers, right? With those 4 girls.
I can see them being like engineers as well. I feel like they might really like some of them. I'm thinking of like 3 of them in particular. They really like the like mechanics of science. Like they want it to be like a thing for them. So some of them might be teachers. I could see a couple of them being teachers as well. Yes.
And what has been the biggest challenge this semester?
I think personally, it's been like balancing my mental health with it all. I think being able to, do all those things, um, really took a toll on me. And I think especially um, the last quarter of the 2019-2020 school year was really difficult. Um, and it had a lot of uncertainty and a lot of stress trying to figure out how students were going to, you know, in some cases, like where they were going to live, how they were going to have the technology, all that stuff. So I came into this year already pretty burnt out. Um, and I feel like teacher burnout is such a perpetual thing, but I was like especially burnt out coming into this year. Um, and so being able to manage my mental health with all of those things has been the biggest challenge of the year for sure.
So later down the line, I was gonna ask this question, but I'll just ask now, like, what are you doing to keep your mental health up? Like, what's helping with that?
Therapy every single week, like without fail. Um, and that's been really cool to watch myself like show up for myself. I think that's been really important for me this year. Moving more. I'm used to like going to a school and walking around all day, like maybe sitting down for my lunch break and to plan out for, a chunk of time during our prep sessions. But other than that, I'm like walking around constantly, like going to different classrooms, checking work. Like I just had so much movement in my day that I took for granted. Um, and even just like being able to just walk 2 miles a day, like I think that's even maybe less than what I was doing in school because we were always up and moving. But even so, like just being able to like have a nice walk every single day has been really helpful. When I do that, it's not always 2 miles. Sometimes it's around the block. But just being able to like get up, go outside, move my body has been really, really helpful. Um, so I think those two things have been huge.
All right. And so you said your school is a social justice based school. I want to know more about that, but I also want to ask a question. Have you had to have, so after March to probably right up to the election, we had a lot of resurgence about Black Lives Matter and a spotlight on police brutality because of everything that's happening in America with the killing of Black people. Have you had to have those conversations with students, with parents, with colleagues at all? And how's that gone?
Oh, 100%. And I bring it up too. Like, if anyone knows me, like, we're going to have that conversation. And my students know that, my coworkers know that, like, my families know that. And so I think we have to. I just think we've had to. And um, my school has handled it, differently depending on the person. Last year, I would say we did not handle it well at all. I think my administration was really scared. I'm just going to say it, like they were scared to do what was right. And they were scared to like speak on it, and they were scared to have hard conversations. And so I was really pushing them at the time. And um, I was really, I was going hard. I was telling my administration, like, you call our school an anti racist school, but you can't even have the conversation. Like, either take that out your name or do something about it. Like, I was hot. I'm still hot about it. Like, I am not happy at the way that we handled it. And I think there was just a lot of anti Blackness. I think there's a lot of anti Blackness at my school. And I think that it's something that, um, I've approached it in different ways. Sometimes I will approach it slowly. Sometimes I will approach it not slowly. And it really just depends on the situation. I think with coworkers, it's been really hard because a lot of coworkers will be like, "Hey, Alexis, do you want to have this conversation for me on race?" I'm like, "No." Like, they'll be like, "Can you come and coach me on how to make my classroom more inclusive?" And I'm like, "No, like that is racist as hell to ask me that right there." Like, and I would just say, like, "Yeah, that's not in my pay grade or my job description. You know, I really appreciate that you think of me that way, but no." And they'll be like, "Well, I'll take you to a coffee or something." I'm like, "No, that's just I don't put up with that. Those are my boundaries. So I think understanding that my coworkers felt after I kind of processed it a little bit and was able to come back in a more compassionate way, I realized that my coworkers felt holistically unprepared to talk about Blackness and to talk about like Black liberation, not even starting at police brutality. Like we weren't even talking about Black liberation and what that looked like. A lot of my coworkers didn't know about intersectionality. And so I think once I was hearing a lot of people say, like, wait, what is that? Like, what's intersectionality? Like, wait, what what do you mean our curriculum isn't centered on like Black and brown, joyful experiences? Like, what would that even look like? Like, well, aren't we supposed to just do like 20% of our curriculum to be culturally responsive? And just like understanding that there was so much internalized white supremacy in me too. Like I'm not exempt from this. Um, it's just like my life's purpose to actively like dismantle it. Like that's really what I'm like on earth to do, I think. Or I've given myself that option. Um, so because of that, I'm really, really like I want it in every single thing that I do. And I know that's not possible, but understanding that that's not everyone else's motivation is something that was shocking in a way, but like, duh, too, like, um, I'm rambling a little bit, but basically we had to restructure the way that we do our professional development. And I had to tell my administration, like, you need to change this, or you need to be honest about who you are. Like, and having those hard conversations with my principal and with also our CEO and all those people, like, you know, who claim to, this is the first time, our charter network has looked into being anti-racist. I'm like, if this is your first year, do not give yourself a pat on the back. You are horrifically behind. Catch up. And I think like just being unapologetic and being willing to give somebody a kick in the ass has really helped my school. And there are other teachers who are down as well and who like are with the cause, and who will say Black Lives Matter. And we have a lot of parents and families who are working as police officers and have said like, we would like to opt our children out of these conversations about police brutality. I mean, just telling them no. Like, if you want to opt out, you're gonna have to go to a school outside of California because it's specifically like in the law, in our Fair Education Act, to like teach kids about these things. So either y'all need to like open up just a little bit, or you're gonna have to send your child to a school outside of California. And just like kind of being maybe more courageous than I thought I could be on some of those things. And having like more of like a hell nah kind of like come at me then kind of vibe than I thought I would have with those things at my school, has shocked me. But I think like in the spirit of Black liberation, I think most Black people know how hard it is to lose someone to police brutality. Like I know that pain, and to see that systemically over and over again is not something I can separate myself from. And it hurts to know that other people can so easily just turn that off. So that's why I'm loud about it. And that's why I don't accept anything less than like liberation and joy and envisioning that in my science classroom, but also in our PDs and just being like, this exercise is bullshit and y'all know that. Like, this is in cahoots with white supremacy and I'm not here for it. And just telling that like in front of my whole school to our principal and asking for change and demanding change that way. I'm just glad I haven't been fired yet, honestly.
Well, I'm glad you haven't been fired. Huh?
I was like, that would look so bad though.
It would. Well, I'm glad you haven't been fired. I'm glad you have kind of found this fire in you to just speak up and just say it, because I think it will help the students in the long run and other educators who are getting these PD sessions on things they need to know. Because if you don't say it, I have a friend who said, if you don't say it, who will? Or like if you keep it in, then nobody's learning. Um,
Hmm.
and you never know what parents are teaching their kids at home. So at least at this point, your school or what you're trying to influence your school to do will help them at least see another perspective. Because we know parents have a huge influence on their kids, and we don't know if they're teaching them right, teaching them wrong, indifferent. But the school should have a responsibility to teach them what's actually happening in the world. So kind of switching off from that, but we'll get back to that in a minute. Kind of talk about technology at your school. You said they have now all students have Chromebooks. How was that transition? Because I'm imagining they didn't have Chromebooks before. So how has been like the learning curve for students to use computers on a daily basis?
Um, they did have Chromebooks before,
Okay.
which really has helped because I think a lot of them know how to use their Chromebook without like a caregiver's help, unless they are like in TK or kindergarten. Um, Even kindergartners from last year that are in first grade like navigate it all right on their own, which is great. Like I'm actually really glad. And a lot of them actually got the Chromebook that they were already using at school. And we just like sent it home with them. I don't remember if we sent it home that first day when everything was shutting down on Friday the 13th in March, which was wild that that's the day that it shut down. Um, but I think like within a week, we had maybe 90% of students with Chromebooks, and 10% of students that we hadn't been in contact with because I think we called every single student in our school maybe 3 times in the first 2 weeks of shutdown. And we just tried to get in contact with everyone. I think by the end of those 2 weeks, we hadn't heard from maybe about 5% of our families. And so we just like kept trying them. And I think now we've heard from just about everyone, maybe like one or two we haven't heard from. But everyone that we've heard from has a Chromebook now, so everyone has access. And if something goes wrong, the network like will link up with them and send the tech help people to go fix it. So that's maybe the best thing I think they've done.
Nice. And for those for the reaching out purposes, do you guys have like a social worker who does this, or does this fall on the teachers? Like, who's responsible for reaching out to families that aren't being connected with? You are.
Mhm.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, we don't have social workers at our school. We have counselors, but that's mainly for in school. It's teachers and administrators. Like basically, if they're on your roster, you are the one that needs to call them, or the person that's helping you with your roster needs to call them.
So then that takes me back to when I asked about like financial hardship and people losing family members to COVID. That comes to you, and you have to report it to the school. Like, how does that?
Yep. We we put it into this platform called Illuminate, and you like type in every single thing about your conversation. You like basically have a shortened transcript of the conversation, what went well, what didn't go well, how they're doing with their studies, but also like in life. And um, we were basically like logging those. And we had to do like 30 calls a week last semester. Um, and now we only do like maybe 5 calls a week, and we each have like 30 students that we keep up with. And if you haven't heard from your student, you have to alert an administrator, and basically harass the parent or the caregiver. Like you have to like be up on their phone and then see like who else in Illuminate is related to them, and then call them and call them and call them and just like go down the list till you see them is basically how it goes. I do not support that. I don't like that at all.
Yeah, that's a lot for the teach. That's not. I don't think that's in your job description. I would imagine that. Not for. It's kind of like a wellness check. Like you're not. a social worker. Like that's what a social worker or a counselor should be doing.
Mhm.
As you might be calling like, hey, your child hasn't turned their homework this week. I'm just trying to see what, can we get them kind of like a parent teacher conference just for homework. But like, how are y'all doing? Um, that's a little extra. I get it because you guys have those relationships built, but that's also what social workers are for. But also, no social workers are overworked, which y'all need to have social workers. So just a while,
Mhm.
just a while. So,
All of that. Yeah. Literally all of that.
so back to tech. You said Illuminate into another program. What other, like, what tools are you using to help teach students?
Google Classroom is where we do most of our lessons. I bought a Screencastify account. That's how I record all my videos. Um, I edit them through either Screencastify Editor or iMovie, upload them onto Google Classroom, and that's like pretty much the tech loop. Um, I think if they have homework, I use a Google Doc and I attach it to their Google Classroom post and I like make a copy for everyone. Um, I think it helps that I might not be the youngest teacher in my school, but I also might be the youngest teacher in my school. I think because I know Google Drive and Google Suite like super well, it's not a huge transition for me. I think also growing up with YouTube, I'm just like, all right, I know not to make this video super long or else I'm gonna skip it. So we just cut it down, like that kind of thing. So I think like kind of having a lot of social media influence growing up helps me on making videos and stuff like that, keeping it short. But I do think a lot of my coworkers had a harder time like learning it. But even now, I think like everyone's in a rhythm for the most part, and it seems to go pretty well. Students know how to navigate it, and that's the most important part. So seems good.
That's good. That was my next question. How are students adapting? They already have computers, but adapting to completely being on computers, if they're getting it, that's really good.
Mhm.
Um, and as for teachers and communication, obviously this is called Teachers Lounge. Um, how are you guys creating sort of a virtual Teachers Lounge so that you're staying connected? Like, what are you using to communicate with your other teachers?
I would say like my school has a lot of cliques with teachers. My clique is my department, and most other people's cliques are their grade levels. Um, and I think that's it. Like, I don't see people outside of my clique, basically. Like, I haven't seen the first grade teachers except for in our like whole school PDs or whole school morning meetings. Like, otherwise, like, we check in with them to see like if they want to participate in something, they're interested in something else. We have occasional happy hours, like once a holiday season kind of situation. Um, where if there's like somebody's holiday coming up, we'll, celebrate it together or something. So that happens maybe 4 times a year anyway. And it's like kind of the same thing this way. But I miss those casual interactions of like waiting for the bathroom and like there's 3 of us in line just being like, so how's it going? Like,
Mhm.
or getting to pop into everybody's classroom because I was on a cart last year. So I would just like go around to every single teacher's classroom in the school and I would just like get to talk with them, get to catch up. I'd come 5 minutes early and that was part of my schedule just to like help them transition, see how they're doing. And inevitably we would get to talk and have lunch together and, have meetings together where you end up getting to check in with them and stuff. So we don't have that. And that's probably one of the harder things.
Yeah, because I feel like you have somebody who you can talk to who kind of knows what you're going through. That's like the commonality. You're all in the school, now you're all virtual. Like, I feel like that's a way to kind of, all right, what's working for you? This didn't work. You can bounce those ideas off each other. And it sometimes helps to have someone who's not in your department or not in your grade to know, like, okay, maybe that can work. What the kindergarten teacher is doing with third graders or what other grades are doing, because some kids are similar, or their first grade kid their brother, like a sibling of a fourth graders in first grade, and you might know they might get some of that information that you're not getting, or vice versa, about the family that can help you learn. So I definitely see where that disconnect could be an issue. Uh,
Mhm.
and that's all my tech questions. And think about your future. So school starts soon. What are your hopes for the spring semester?
Hopes for the spring semester is that kids will have more fun. Students will learn more, um, learn more of the things they want to learn about. Um, I also want to send home little like science experiment packets, like $10 each, and hopefully they can like make a volcano explode at home. Sorry, caregivers, like, but we're doing it, and send home some like science experiments. That would be dope. I think they would love that. So hopefully something where they can like maybe plant a seed, plant their own garden, that's supposed to help with mental health as well. So maybe they could like tend to their garden if we send home like little pots and little seeds with soil. And hopefully just like trying to figure out ways for them to have more hands-on and more packets, so that they don't have to like be on screen all day and they can just like have their science journals intact and be able to like write it down, take a picture, and not have to like spend so much time trying to figure out how to type or draw on the screen or whatever. So um, that's probably my biggest hope for spring semester with kids. I think personally, I am trying to figure out how to take care of myself while I teach. Um, and also potentially applying for law school, which has like been a dream of mine, but also wanting to. Um, I love teaching, like, and I also see how um, that systemic powerlessness is so embedded in the education system, like the compliance based expectations for both students and teachers go deep. Um, and while I feel like I'm doing what I can with it, and also like accepting that there's a lot of change that will take a long time to make, I'm trying to figure out how to like change that systemically. And I feel like that's maybe like my core passion of everything. Um, so trying to figure out whether or not I can do that in the classroom or outside of it for a bit and maybe then come back. That being said, I really think I just want like one more year at least to like figure those things out, to at least like say goodbye in person once we get vaccinated, like is the hope and that kind of thing. So I think personally there's like a big change in this coming year for me. And this is appropriate right on, second day of the new year. I'm reflecting on all these things. And it's hard to think of leaving. So I'm going to give myself time and not rush it. But that's something I'm really thinking about this year as well.
Just killing all my questions at one time, and I love it. Another question was COVID, not COVID, Lord, college, not college, career aspirations, which you kind of just touched on.
Mm-hmm.
Something you said at the beginning of that really it brought up a question, but I've now forgotten because I talk too much sometimes.
Feel that. I'm so sorry for talking your ear off.
I talk too much sometimes because I could have just said it immediately. Your hopes for next semester were to have the students learn. Oh, boom. So you said these, you want to send home experiments to the kids. Where does that fall in the budget? Are you going to have to pay for that yourself? Is that coming from the school? Like, how does that work for those kind of at-home experiments that you want to do?
Yeah, I don't have $2,500 to send little experiments to 250 kids that are $10 each, but my science budget does.
Okay.
So I'm using like the totality of my science budget for both third and fourth grade to just send them like $10 each. we are going to just order in bulk and then put them in little packages. And then in the new year, well, this year, we'll put that together and then be able to send them home either through meal pickup, because they have meal pickup at my school like once every, I think it's once every day. I don't go because I don't want to get COVID, but they have meal pickup there, so they can pick it up there, or they do supplies pickup that they do like once a month. So it'll be in the January supply pickup.
Great. Good that you have those funds to do that. And so on your personal life, how has COVID impacted you and your family?
Hard. We've lost a couple of people. I don't know who hasn't, honestly. Um, I think it's like, luckily no one in my family has contracted coronavirus. Um, and also like where we live, like I live in California, they live in Memphis, Tennessee. Like we are hotspots right now, and I'm like terrified. Because my parents are self-employed. They don't have another safety net outside of like what they do, you know? And so them trying to, make rent and make ends meet and, you know, pay for, cremations or things like that, or, also like going to somebody's funeral, like it's just made all those things harder to do, um, and like harder to grieve even properly. Like
Hmm.
I couldn't go to a friend's funeral because it was in Memphis, and um, like I just, didn't want to risk it. Um, so stuff like that, is really difficult to go through, I think, for most people. And I don't think my family's special. 1.7 million people around the world have died from COVID, and counting. And that's of the people, that have passed away. And so many more have had it and have, long term health effects, either through stress or like physical ailments or losing their job, or it's huge. It's a really big thing, and it's touched everyone. So it's weird in that way where you're like, this isn't just about you or just about your family. Like trauma can be sometimes, like it's everybody. And that's like oddly and terrifyingly comforting and horrific. And yeah, I mean, I have hopes for vaccine, and think also a lot of people don't want to get vaccinated, which is a whole other thing that I don't know about. But I'm hoping that everyone gets vaccinated, and that um, people can at least like start to go outside more, and start to like not be physically distanced anymore. But yeah, there's so much to it. My family's had a hard time. I've had a hard time.
I'm sorry that you and your family have gone through this, and I hope that in the near future things will have a change for the other direction. Hopefully, and we can only hope from now. It's not 2020 anymore, so maybe there'll be better luck. But I don't want to risk anything, so we'll knock on wood on that one.
Yeah. How's your family?
My family is good. We've had losses, not to COVID, but I mean, I just feel like my family in general just has. I tell people that like, and when I was a kid, we didn't go on vacation. We just went home for funerals. So that was like a thing growing up. And I feel like my grandmother, just something for another night. My grandmother has gone to, or I don't say gone to, but like been a part of, I would say at least 10 funerals since March. And not that they're COVID related, but people have just been passing. Like my last great grandparent passed. I had to be the voice of reason to tell my mom, like, no, you cannot go. I'm sorry, like, you're not going. I didn't say it like that, obviously, but I really wanted to. But I had to realize how to reach her in that moment because I wasn't
Mm,
in person when I had that conversation. But it's kind of like you can't, like, where that is happening, protocols aren't being followed correctly. So don't put yourself in a situation where then somebody's coming to your funeral. Like I had to be real with it. Like we don't want that situation.
yeah.
A great aunt passed who had cancer, rang the bell, and then I guess it came back.
Mm,
So that happened. That was probably within 3 months of each other. Different sides of the family, but everybody's in the same city. Um, it's like every day I'm just hearing that somebody else passed, and it might be due to COVID, or it might not be due to COVID, but the implication that you can't now go to a funeral. The funeral is now being projected on Facebook Live, which I've seen that multiple times now, which just, I get it. It's also just strange.
mm,
That's like where we're at to have those moments. Um, my sister-in-law works in the hospital, so they recently had a COVID scare. I, but she did just get vaccinated, so I'm guessing she didn't test positive. I didn't really follow up on that.
mm,
I was waiting, and then next time I saw she was getting vaccinated, so I was like, okay, I guess she didn't wasn't positive, so that's good. Um, yeah, so it's been interesting. Nothing super close COVID related that's been devastating, but a lot of well, you just can't go to this thing because it's just not getting on a plane is not the best decision. Um, weirdly, so yeah, that's my family situation with COVID. Just and try not to watch. I watch the news. I just hear like random stuff like, "Oh, there's four new strains." I'm like, we can just turn this off now. Like, I thought it was just one. Now there's four, and now it's in America, and I'm just like, Lord. So yeah,
yeah.
avoiding that and just like staying in the house basically. So
I really feel you. I really feel that.
occasional Target trip, Costco. Um, if I know a friend is being responsible, like I know some people like, then we don't go another. Okay, we can be around each other, but for the most part, like no. I see you on social media. Nah, can't do that. Can't do that.
I know. I felt like the bad cop in like my friend group where I'm like, look, if you have not been quarantined 2 weeks with a test, you're not coming into my house. Period. Like, and we're also at stay-at-home orders even, so it's like not even an option. But before, it was like if you don't have a negative test, um, you're not coming to my house or socially distancing from me. Like,
Yeah. I mean, in all honesty, there were like I can remember two situations where I was put in a very awkward situation. I was like, I did not know this is what was going to happen. And I went 2 weeks, and I was just like, this is not what I thought we discussed. And it's like when you're not the one, you don't have the agency to leave, and you're like, okay, I'm going to be. This was questionable, but that was forever ago, and I was like, hmm. And I now know, like, okay, I gotta when somebody brings up an option, and that's like who it is, like, I'll think about this. A lot, the more questions are just like, nah. And I'm also not in that location a lot of times anymore, so that's also a thing. Um, so I've gone through all my questions. I have more questions that are Instagram submitted questions from people who submitted questions online, and then some fun questions that can be answered in like one word or a few words.
okay.
That's the right way to say that. So the Instagram submitted questions. First one is, are you okay?
I'm COVID okay. And I think the standard of okay, if you had asked me that at the beginning of 2020, as I am now, like I would have had a completely different metric for what that meant. But like, am I safe? Yes. Am I like having some semblance of um, stability in the facets of my life? Yes. Like, is my family well? Yes. Am I working on my mental health? Yes. So I'm COVID okay.
Okay. How has the pandemic widened the opportunity gap for your students?
I don't even know yet. I think that's something I'm kind of holding my breath on. Um, and I think like the systemic, it's a little bit difficult because I think sometimes kids get told there's like an opportunity gap or an achievement gap and they need to work hard to fix it. And I try to tell my students that there's a systemic gap and it's not your fault. And people are going to tell you that it's your fault because of the color of your skin, but it's not. It's someone else's fault and you were in it. Um, and I think COVID is making that systemic issue bigger. I think the oppression is more visible to people that maybe were able to ignore it before, or maybe felt like they weren't, as at risk, maybe because they had worked hard, like the myth of meritocracy is being threatened. And I love that. But also, that comes with a lot of like things that also my students might have like fallen into that would have given them some type of security in their world. And to me, like how black people respond to systemic racism and oppression is like valid. And so it might have taken some of those opportunities away. um, and I think about my director friend that I've told you about, how like he doesn't get to like get out and like record things, and like this is really cool that like we're doing this virtually, and I think Deontay does it that way as well. But like even knowing that I have some students that wanted to be directors, like how do they get the opportunity to explore that right now? Like they don't, not as much as maybe they want to. um how do they take pictures, how do they talk to their friends about these things? And I think like just the ability to develop those things is really the opportunities I think they're missing. And that's not quite the same as the systemic gap that I associate with the opportunity gap. But I think there's a lot to grieve. And I think there's a lot of futures that have changed because of COVID. And I don't know what that looks like yet.
Gotcha. How can individuals help? How can I help? How can Joe Schmo down the street help? Teachers, education.
Um, I would say you and Joe Schmo and myself can all get involved in our local politics. See what's up with education. Like, see what your local representatives are talking about, what kind of policies have just been passed, um, what kind of funding is happening where you are with education. And I know in California, there's not much funding going to education. There could be a lot more. So advocating for that. And tuning in. I'm still working on this myself, but like tuning into city council meetings, learning more about the people's budget for folks in California. And I think getting more politically involved locally is just a great idea. And one of the bright things that COVID has brought us is Zoom. And you can tune into all these things from the same place that you work and eat and sleep. And while that might be not so great, at least you don't have to go anywhere. So I would say that. Also donate to, um, you can donate to Black content creators right now, specifically like Black educators who are creating curriculum that centers Black and Brown students. I know of a few, and I can like get their links and send them to you, Shane, and then you can like post it with this as well. But like supporting Black artists right now is really important. You could support, and donate to all kinds of Black artists, in ones that ones that you don't know, ones that you support, like donate to them on a regular basis so that they can like rely on, your commitment to them. If they have like subscriptions, Shane, I don't know if you have a subscription, but like you're doing this. So like donate to Shane, like, you know, and also to Black Lives Matter, and also like get involved and get informed. And if you're in Georgia, like vote. But if you're not in Georgia right now, go ahead and get informed on your local politics and national politics so that next time you can vote as well. And I hope you voted this last time. Um, and you can phone banking. It's again, it's another act of social justice that you could do. Just, figure out what works for you with social justice. Some people like to post on Instagram. I don't really like to post on Instagram. I like to do other things. So just find out what works for you, learn about it, but then don't just learn about it, act on it. And that's even if you're wrong, make a mistake, let someone talk to you about it, and then learn, like continue to learn. Don't just learn from books. Like try to do what you think will help. Listen to Black people when they're talking to you about race. And if they say this is about race, believe them. Um, and yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of stuff in there. So y'all got a lot of options to pick. So pick one of them. She just gave y'all a whole chapter of things to look into.
Mhm.
Uh, but
I was gonna say, and you could read the book. So you want to talk about race, you could buy that book. That's a great book, and that is a great starting point if you want to get involved but don't know how to act yet. So you want to talk about race? Great book.
so that's in a question later on. So remember that. What have been the best tools you've used to support virtual learning?
Hmm. Google Classroom. Maybe that's not a good answer, but Google Classroom and Zoom, um, I think have been the best tools that have supported virtual learning.
Okay. Has your school provided resources for anti-racism courses and curriculum?
Like yes and no. Like as you know, they have the Chromebooks. They gave that, but um, I don't think that they've like done anything extra on courses and curriculum that we have. Like I still have the same curriculum. It's not necessarily like adjusted for virtual learning, and I think the same for other teachers as well. It's not really adjusted yet. So
So no resources related to anti-racism.
oh, to anti-racism, I missed that part. That's like the
Oh,
most
maybe I
important.
said that too quickly. Sorry. Yes. Yeah, so has your school provided resources for anti-racism courses or curriculum?
Okay, we are doing a book study on, so you want to talk about race, mostly fueled by the Anti-Racism Task Force, which is mostly teachers volunteering their time and energy to have these conversations, which I think they should be paid for. I would like a stipend for it. I have talked to them about it. They have told me no, but they do give me more time. It's still not enough. I will just go ahead and tell you that. They have not provided enough resources for our anti-racism courses and curriculum because we out here making it. And they're like, oh, don't worry, put that on your CV. For who? For what?
I work here.
I work here.
Either go look for another job or like,
Right. And it's like, even so, like, that's such a capitalistic way. Like, that makes me feel icky. That makes me feel like an object. Like, that makes me feel like you're just saying, "Oh, just put that just write that down on a piece of paper and we'll write whatever you're doing down on a piece of paper. Equal transaction, right?" And I'm just like, "No, this is how systems profit off of Black and brown bodies, off women, off queer people. Like, I'm not here for this." And yet it's the conundrum I find so many teachers that care in, where they're like, "But if I don't say it, who's going to say it?
mhm.
If I don't make this, who's going to make it?" And that's where I have found a lot of tension. I find I have a lot of energy for that, and I feel really grateful for that. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. Um, and so I've been asked multiple times to teach PDs on what is intersectionality, what's this, what that. Oh, you have such great comments. It's like, no, I don't have such great comments. I don't allow myself to get comfortable in my privilege as much. I'm still I still have privilege I'm unpacking all the time. Um, but I thought about these things. I've put energy into them. I've had terrible life experiences because of these systems. Um, and like some, it just feels really tokenizing in a lot of ways.
It's very, I talked to a coworker like this about these things. Like, it's a great that you have things to say, but just know that people will tap you. I'm just waiting. I was like, just know when you have something to say, then people will go to you for this, and you most likely will not be paid for this. So it's
Mhm,
like a double-edged sword of like, do I do this for the greater good? Because we should, however, we would like to be reciprocated or compensated for
mhm,
this work, because if it wasn't me, you'd have to pay someone else to do it. So I'm providing the value, you just don't want to provide the value back to me.
mhm.
I need to continue whatever. So it's like always kind of like, do I say something or just like, sky blue? But we all know that. You know,
Right.
the sky is blue, but I can tell you my skin is black and you actually do some more stuff. So
It reminds me of like Issa Rae in Insecure when I think it's like her the very first episode where she like goes into her like, you know, their lunch lounge and they're like, "Oh, Issa, do you know what this word means?" And she's just like, "No." And then she's like, "I know what that means." And just like walks.
you know what is on fleek? She's like,
Yes. Like
I'm serious.
it beats me. I feel like I have those days some days. And then on other days, I'm like, this is a really great opportunity to break compliance. And I think like my school really likes compliance. Like they really like it when no one rings the bell and when everyone nods their heads in PD and no one has any feedback that's negative. Feedback can be positive too. And I'm just like, your system's bullshit and you know it. Who's telling you to say this and who is this for? And being able to say those words in a PD, um, I find like the hardest thing about that is like all the meetings afterward. Like people are just like, oh, I just want to check in about that comment that you made, see if you're okay. Like, or if you want to expand on it, do you want to say more about it? And I'm like, if I accept this meeting, you are asking for more unpaid emotional Black labor. I decline your meeting. I'm fine. Like, I don't have anything more to say, or I would have said it. And I didn't. So I'm good. And I think like that's made a lot of people, especially like admin, where none of my admin are Black women. And there's one Black man in our admin, and usually he's on the same page. He never asks for meetings with me like that. Like, it's the other, white or white passing admin that are just like, oh, I want to have that conversation with you. Like, we don't need to have a conversation. We already talked. So I think like that kind of like uncomfortability and that passive aggression, it makes me feel controlled. And I don't like that. I don't do well with being controlled. And so I think that's probably the hardest thing is that sometimes they'll be like, well, I just want to call you to talk about something else. And I answer, and it is something I need. But then inevitably it turns into a 45-minute call about the comment I made. Um, with this like veil of support.
Mhm.
But if they wanted to support me, they would have listened to me when I said no. So it's stuff like that.
Gotcha. Um, have you needed to relocate from your home to virtually teach in a lower cost geography?
What?
Have you needed to move to save money?
No, not yet. We haven't had to move. Luckily, I split rent with my partner, so and also luckily our salaries have not gotten cut. I really thought that was going to happen, but luckily we haven't had that, so we're able to afford LA for now. Um, and at this point, it would be more expensive to get out of like our lease than to stay in it.
Gotcha.
So for now, we're Gucci, and I have not had to relocate.
Have your expenses gone up due to needs for teaching from home?
No.
Do you feel, no, this doesn't apply to you. What has been the upside of online learning that couldn't happen in a school setting?
Pajamas. I take naps in the beginning of the day. I will just like, if I'm not teaching or prepping or, whatever, like I can actually just work out at 8 a.m. if I need to, like I can actually sleep until 7:30. That's wild. I don't have to wake up before the sun. That's lovely. Like, and I can actually end my day at a reasonable time where the sun is still up. That's also lovely. I think those are some things that virtual teaching has helped me with. It's just like getting more sleep, um, getting to like call my family more, call my friends more. Like I just have more flexibility. Um, and I will say, even when I was studying for the LSAT, my direct like manager was like, this month you're studying for the LSAT. Why don't you take 9 to 12 every day and just study for the LSAT? And then from 1 to 3:30, after your lunch break, I'm like, she counted my lunch break. Excellent. Um, After that, you just record your videos, your head on prep, like you're meeting all your deadlines. What do I need to control you for? I'm like, this is how you know me. This is excellent. So
Yeah, I feel like that's great management because I also have this mindset of that you don't pay me, if I'm on a salary, you don't pay me for my time, you pay me for my work. So,
mhm.
granted, I still work the 9 to 5, but uh, if I can get the same work done in 4 hours, what's the issue? So,
I'll see it. Spot the light. I think we're good.
since COVID, that has not been not been a thing for me. But before, I was like, oh yeah, I can get this work done so easy, so quick. Now it's like, I'm gonna need those hours, but it's cool. It's life. All right, so now for the fun questions. These all can be answered in a few words or one word. What was your favorite subject in school?
Hmm. English.
Your favorite dish to cook?
Ooh, doubles.
Doubles?
Hmm.
What is a double?
Doubles is like a Trinidadian street food.
Oh,
Um, and my mom's from Trinidad, so I I can fuck with some doubles real hard.
okay. Your favorite restaurant in LA?
Have I been to one? For like takeout or like before shutdown?
Whatever, whichever one you want to mention, or both.
Okay, for takeout, Al's. If you haven't gone to Al's and you're in LA, quit Chick-fil-A. Y'all should have been quit anyway, but Al's hot chicken, it's incredible. Best chicken sandwich of my life. And then probably to sit down in is Simpang Asia. It's a Indonesian restaurant kind of near where I live in Culver City. Super cute. We do for takeout now, but when things open back up, that's probably where we're headed.
Got it. Was that I quit Chick-fil-A? Is that what you said?
Yeah, people out here talking about I still eat at Chick-fil-A.
I just want to clarify what you said so we're on the same page. Got it. If you weren't a teacher, what would you be doing professionally?
I'd be a lawyer.
Best gift you've ever given or received?
Mm, that's a hard one. I feel like I've received better gifts than I've given. Let me just put that out there because I'm surrounded by very thoughtful people. Um, that is so hard because I will say for this year I got an e-reader. Best gift, like best gift, but that's a hard one.
Okay. Um, if you could eat one vegetable for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Hmm. Broccoli.
Is a potato a vegetable or not?
Oh, it is, and I changed my answer to potato.
Okay, so everybody's been on the fence about if it's a potato or not. I've been told it's a starch, but who am I?
It's a root vegetable. Root vegetable.
Like I said, who am I? Not a dietitian. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no? Most extreme thing you've ever done?
Most extreme thing I've ever done.
Mm-hmm. That could go range from jumping out of a plane to moving in with a partner. You can, extreme is whatever you consider extreme.
I actively chose to no longer believe in God. That's probably the most extreme thing I've ever done.
That's extreme. If you live by any mantras, what is one?
Hmm. Probably you got this.
Okay. What do you think you spend too much money on?
That's a good question. Probably food.
I think it's like the only, it's either food, like at first I might say clothes, like how you spend money on clothes during a pandemic, that's whatever. But I feel like food's been like the number one answer.
Mhm.
And the pre-pandemic, obviously other things, but right now it's definitely food. How would your best friends describe you in one word?
Hmm. Just one word, Shane?
Just one word.
All of them?
Or one best friend, your partner, your parents, just how do you think they describe you?
Energetic.
Okay. If you could recommend a book, a podcast, a TV series, or a movie, what would you recommend?
Okay. Book series, Three Body Problem by Si-Chen Liu, I think. He's a Chinese author. Um, Fantastic. Changed my life. Would highly recommend Three Body Problem. Trilogy, sci-fi. Just letting y'all know. Um, and I can only choose one of the options and one thing of all the options, right? Of my recommendations.
I mean, you can do all four, you can do just one, it's up to you.
Okay. Y'all already, heard this, so you want to talk about race book. Podcast? I really like the Ezra Klein podcast. Very specific thing. But Vox Media is a media source that I like generally, as well as The Guardian. And I like Vox Media podcast, but Ezra Klein's podcast is really good. Anything by Angela Davis, anything by James Baldwin would recommend. Anything by Toni Morrison would recommend.
Okay. What is your favorite movie?
Favorite movie is, it's currently changing because I've watched a lot of really good movies in quarantine. But the long-standing answer since probably about 2015 has been The Prestige. Really love that movie. That's currently my favorite movie, and still kind of, balancing out some other ones.
Okay. What is the best vacation you've ever taken?
We went to Tobago back in 2000 and what is that now? 14, I think. Tobago is the small sister island of Trinidad, and that's where my mom is from. And that was incredible. It's beautiful. Getting to go back to Trinidad after my grandma passed away was really lovely for my mom, I think, to reconnect. um, with her family, who all still lives there, and also it was the longest time we'd been in Trinidad, with the exception of like for Christmas break or whatever. So it was really really great.
Nice. What is important for those who do not know you personally to know about you?
If you don't know me personally, um, it's important to know about me that if you're meeting me, I take a long time to warm up to you. But once you're in, you're in.
Okay.
Um, so if I'm cold, it's probably because I'm watching and I expect you to do the same.
Is there anything else you'd like to share before we conclude this interview?
I hope everyone is out here staying safe, um, taking care of yourselves. Um, and I hope that 2021 brings anyone that is ends up watching this. I hope it brings you uncertainties as did 2020, but I hope that these uncertainties are given to you with a little bit more ease and grace than the ones of 2020 were. And I hope that in 2021, if your resolutions, don't get the attention that you want them to have, that you know that you were doing better things.
Okay. If you said you don't post on Instagram, but if you want people to follow you, go ahead and give them your handles. If not, we'll just delete this part.
Yeah, don't follow me. That's fine. I don't post anything. Don't waste your time.
Do not waste your time following Alexis. Got it. So I want to say thank you again. I believe that you, as a teacher, are a superhero, and you are helping our students progress. And from what I've learned from you, you're learning to be flexible with your students so that they can continue to learn, even if it's not with curriculum that is actually not even possible to be taught in your type of schedule. Um, you are helping to shape our future and shining light as an example to our students, and your input as a Black woman to help form anti-racism resources for your school and putting in that work, though is not being paid for, is very valuable to those who are receiving it. So once again, thank you. You are a superhero, and I appreciate you sitting down for this interview with me.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for doing this. Again, like it means so much just that you're listening. I think that's like a huge thing that I don't feel as a teacher is that people want to hear what we have to say. So thank you so much for just like starting this teachers lounge in, the midst of not having so many teachers lounges. Um, and I'm really excited to see how this turns out. So thank you so much.